Hello and welcome to this tutorial, lesson 16. We're going to continue on with our platformer game and we're going to look at adding platforms to the game. Okay, so the code I've given you to start with today is basically the same code that we finished off in the last lesson. We've got all our constants, all our basics, and last tutorial we looked at adding a player class. This is where you create a player object with a width and a height. You've got a surface which is filled in red. You've got methods for controlling the left, right movement and to stop the movement of the object. You've also got an update method which updates the movement of the object based on X and Y. And you've got gravity being introduced with a jump method and calculating the gravity depending on where you are. That's all to do with the player class, and then down at the bottom here we've got the player class being instantiated, being created, and our main loop which deals with the events for the button presses and updates the sprite lists, all the sprites in the object. In this case, it's mainly the player object within the list. Okay, so that's what you should have so far, and it should look something like this. It should just simply jump a player sprite on the screen like that with gravity enabled. What we're doing today is we're going to add in platforms. So we're going to extend our program to add in some new classes, and we should have a platform based thing with platforms we can jump on, we can control the size of the platforms, and we can move around. So this is what we are working on today. Okay, if you go to the template code, which you should have downloaded, or continuing on from the program that you created last time, the first thing you'll notice in our program at the moment is that our player object can leave the screen. You can literally just walk off the screen, so it can bounce off left or right. That is a problem. So the first thing we're going to do is to stop that from happening. You're going to go to your code and we're going to go down to near the bottom. Inside the main loop, down at the bottom here, inside our while loop, just before we update the sprite, just before we call the update to update and regenerate it essentially, we're going to add a check in here. We're going to check if player near right of screen. So basically we're going to check and make sure we can't go off the screen. To do that, we're going to use the player's rectangle right of position. So we're going to go if player.rect.right is greater than the screen width. Now remember, we've got screen width as a constant set at the top, so we can refer to it directly. If it's greater than the screen width, what we're going to do is we're going to reset the player right side to the screen width. So as soon as you try and bounce off the screen, basically it's going to reset the right position of the player to the edge of the screen. And we're going to do the same thing for the left. So check if player near left of screen. And to do that, we're going to go if player.rect.left is less than 0. Remember, the 0 position on the X would be the far left of the screen. If you go beyond that, that means you've left the screen on the left side. So if it's less than 0, we're going to reset the player left position to 0 to make him come back on the screen and stay at that left side. And if we run that, hopefully we should have something that works. Let's check. So my little thing here, if I go to the right, as soon as I try and go off, it stops me and resets the position to the right there. And as soon as I go to the left, it does the same. It stops me going off the screen and resets the left position to the left. Boom. So we now have bounds within the screen to stop our player leaving the screen window. Okay, now we fix that, we're going to go up and we need to create our blocks. Well, we've already got a class for the player here, a player class. What we're going to do is we're going to go down to the end of the player class. We're going to make sure we've got some space here. And we're going to make a new class. And this is going to be for class for the platform objects. Okay, so let's call it class. Make sure on the left hand side. Class platform. And again, because we're doing sprites, we're going to import the sprite as a master class, superclass here. So we're using the sprite. And we need to create our init, our constructor class for this as well. So def underscore underscore init underscore underscore self, because it always needs to refer to itself. And we're going to have a width a height, an X, and a Y attribute. Okay, these are the values of the platform. So the width of the platform, the height, and an X and Y position where the platform is going to be created on the screen. Okay, as always as well, we are going to inherit the initiation class of the super one as well. So by doing that, that will inherit all the creation things from the sprite super class here. Okay, so that's just inheriting it so we can use it. Okay, to create the object, we need to do some code. So self.image equals, same as we have before, equals pygame.surface, open brackets, width, height, okay, and close our brackets and close our speech. So that is going to create a surface for our platform using the width and height attributes that have been passed in when this object is made. So that's going to create a surface for our object. And then we're going to give the surface a fill color. Now I'm going to use green, but you could make your platforms any color you want, as long as it's not the same as the background color, which we use is blue. Okay, now we're going to set its position. To do that, first we're going to do as we always do, self.image.getRect. So we're going to get the rectangle surface, and we're going to set the rectangle X to the X value that's been passed in, and self.rect.y to the Y value that's been passed in. So basically all that's done is set the width and the height of the surface and the X and the Y position of the surface rectangle. Okay, that's the initiation class done. Now we need to be able to draw this to the screen. So def draw self, because we're referring to itself, and we're going to draw it to the screen surface. And all we have to do is self.draw screen. So we're going to draw this object to the screen when that draw function, draw method is run. And that's all we really need at the moment in there. Okay, we're just saying create a surface with the settings and then draw it to the screen. There's our class for the platform. Make sure you've done that and completed that code to start with. So if you run it, you'll notice now nothing has changed because, well, we haven't actually created any platform objects yet. So the next thing we need to do underneath here, I'm going to go make some space. Back on the main left-hand side, we're going to create some block objects, some platform block. I'm going to call it blocks just to keep it separate from platforms. Okay, so block 1 equals platform, and then use our settings. We've got width of the platform, I'm going to say is 210. The height of the platform I'm going to set as 70. I'm going to put the platform at X 500 and Y 500. Okay, you can experiment with these and change them later on. Okay, now I'm going to do two more very quickly. Ta-da, there they are. So I've now got 3 block objects created with some slightly different values. The size of them's the same, the width and height are the same. However, you'll notice the X and the Y positions are different, so they're not all on top of each other. Otherwise, you'd only see one. Okay, so I've moved the X and Y positions. Now we've created the platform objects using our platform class. We need to actually do something with them. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a new list for all the platform objects so that we can manipulate them and do things with them. Okay, can be helpful later on. So I'm creating a new sprite group here called platform list to put all the platforms in that we're creating. So there's a piece of code. Now all we need to do now is add them to it. So I'm going to say platform underscore list dot add and add block 1. And with the magic of copy and paste, I'm going to do that 2 more times for block 2 and block 3. So when we run that, we'll have 3 platform objects added to our list, ready to use in the game. So if we run this, you'll still notice that there are still no platforms here. And that's because, even though we've created the objects, we haven't actually run the draw method to add those objects to the screen, those platforms to the screen. So we need to go down in our code, back into the main loop here, where we have run other code. For example, I'm looking for where we have run the draw method. And here we are. Here's our draw for the all sprites list. But remember, we've put we've put it in a separate list at the moment. So I'm going to go platform underscore list dot draw screen. So I'm going to draw all the platforms in the platform list to the screen. Okay, and I'm doing this separately so we could update them and do things with them differently during the game. Right, next. If we run it, you can see we've now got some platforms. However, the only problem is I can't jump on them. They're completely transparent. There's no interaction with the platforms and the player. So let's make that fixed. Okay, so make sure you've scrolled up and we're looking for the player update method. Okay, where we update the player position and things like that. And I want you to make a space in between where you set the Y and the X values for the player. Okay, in here we're going to check basically to see if the player has collided with any blocks. And to do that, we're going to make, I'm going to put a little comment here, check if player collision with platform blocks. Okay, to do that, what we're going to do, we're going to make a new little list called block hit list. Okay, that's going to keep a list of any blocks that have collided. And to detect if they have collided, we're going to go pygame.sprite.sprite collide. Okay, so this is a built-in function to check if the sprite has collided with another sprite. And the two things we're going to check, we're going to check if the player, the self one, because we're actually talking about, we're running the player object, has collided with any blocks in the platform list. And there's one final setting here we're going to set to false. If I set that to true, it will delete and remove the other block. We don't want it to remove it, we just want to detect if it's collided. So if the player, the self, has collided with any objects in the platform list, it will detect it and return us a value. And what we're going to do now, we're going to create a little loop for block in block hit list. For any blocks that it has collided and detected, we are going to reset the position, the player's position, okay, based on where the collision has taken place. So if the player underscore change Y is bigger than 0, we are going to reset the rectangle bottom of the player to equal the top, the rect top of the block it's collided with. So basically, if it's gone and hit it on top, it's going to reset it so the bottom of the player is standing on top of the block that it's landed on. Else if self.change underscore Y is less than 0, we're going to reset the rect top to the bottom of the block that it's landed on. Block.rect.bottom. So basically, if I've jumped and you've hit it on the top and the collision's happened on the top of the player, it's going to reset it so it can't go through the block from below. Okay, now if we run that, let's have a look. So what we've got so far. So now you should notice I can jump and land on it, that's fine. And I can jump up and do it, but there's one other problem at the moment. If I try and jump again, it won't let me jump again. Once I'm on the block, it won't let me jump again. I can walk off the edge, but it won't let me jump. So we need to add one little line of code here, just underneath this. If a collision has taken place and it's detected it, we need to reset the movement of it so it doesn't, so it back to 0 basically. Okay, so on here, we're going to stop vertical movement, vertical movement, by resetting the self.change Y to 0. Otherwise, what happens is it still thinks it's falling. Make sure that's in line with the if statements here. Okay. By adding that in, we should now be able to jump on a block and then jump again and jump again. Okay. However, there is one problem. We can jump on the blocks, but at the moment we can walk straight through them. There's no collision with the x-axis. So, very simple. Now we've checked the Y position, we're going to copy all of this. Copy. I'm going to copy all of this. We could type it out again, but let's not avoid writing code if we have to. And underneath the X one here, where we're checking the X, I'm going to paste that. However, we need to change it from Y to X. So where we've checked Y, we're going to change that to X. And where we've done top and bottom, we are now going to check for left and right. So bottom is now going to be right, and top is left, and the vice versa down here. Top is left, and bottom is going to be right. Right. So we should have now checked all the ones in the block and we're checking the X position, and we've got left and right instead of top and bottom. And hopefully, if I've not got any mistakes in my code, now we should be able to jump on the block, and we should also be able to collide so we can't go through the block, either that way or that way. So I can happily jump around like this, and there's collisions with the blocks objects that we've made. Perfect. Check your code and make sure it looks like this so far. Pause the video if you need to. Okay, so that's all well and good. We've now got platforms we can jump on, but we've only got 3 platforms at the moment. What if we want more platforms as a normal level would? Well, I can go back here, I can create more objects. I could do block 4, block 5, block 6, and then add them on here. But you know, a platform might have 10 or 20 different platform blocks on it, which would be this repeating this code lots and lots of times. It would be very inefficient. So one final thing, let's do this a better way. Okay, so instead of creating the objects blocks like this and then adding them one at a time like this, what we're going to do is I'm actually just going to comment that code out for a second. So I'm going to comment it out. So it's there, but it's not going to run for a second. So comment out region. Okay, let's do this a better way. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to have a list of all the platforms, just like we did before. In fact, let's just be lazy and copy that piece of code there. So platform list, I still need that piece of code there. Still need that. But what I'm going to do, instead of creating all the objects separately like this, like 1, 2, 3, I'm going to make a list of locations for all the platforms. Okay, so I'm going to make a list of all the different locations, and I can actually just use the ones I've got here and put them into a nice little list. There's my first one, comma. Let's do the second one again, and I'm going to do the third one. So all I'm doing here is a list of different locations, and I'm just doing the same one. So it's not going to actually look radically different, okay? But I'm putting it in a list like this. So I've got a list of my locations, my 3 platforms here. Notice there's a comma in between each one, and there's an extra open and close bracket at the very start and end like that. So it's a list of different elements for our locations. They've all got the width, height, and X and Y positions of the platforms. Okay. Now, instead of having to go through and go add like that for our loads of different individual ones, I'm going to create a loop. I'm going to say for platform in locations, for each platform in this locations list 1, 2, 3, it's going to go block equals platform. I'm just going to type the code and I'll explain it. Platform 0, comma, platform 1, oops, comma, you probably see where this is going, platform 2, comma, platform 3. So what that is going to do, for every single item in this list, it's going to loop through and create a new platform object with the 4 indexes here, 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, and create objects for it. And after it's created it, we're then going to platform underscore list dot add the new block. So we've just created a loop here to go through and add each of these as an object into the platform list. So if I run it, it doesn't actually look any different. However, the benefit is now, if I want to go and add more blocks to my list, all I have to do is in here is create a new item in my list. So a new bracket here, and then put in my values. For example, 210, 70, I don't know, let's do 350, and I don't know, 2 150. Okay, simple as that. I've just added a new item in my list. Click run. I've now got 4 blocks. 1, 2, 3, 4. That was the lucky guess. So you can add more and more blocks here by just adding them to the list, and I don't have to keep adding. I don't have to keep creating them each time because it's doing it in the list for me, in my loop for me. Okay. So today's challenge. I want you to extend your platforms so you've got different platforms, at least 5, and also try changing the different settings, the width and the height, so they are not all the same, but make it so that you can actually jump between the platforms just about like that. And you can see I've changed the width and the height of these and the locations, the X and Y. So I've got a very simple platformer game that I can do. Experiment with them using your list here. Can you create more? Remember, you've got the width, the height, the X and the Y locations for the platforms. Good luck and see you in the next tutorial.